Okay, we're going to talk about white blood cells in this one, or leukocytes. WBCs. So basically their function is to cause or foster the immune and the inflammatory response. Okay, so they're responsible for inflammation. Okay. Another thing that they do is they help remove toxins and wastes. Most of these, their location is in the connective tissue. It's actually in the connective tissue. And now the question then what you get asked is, why do you talk about them in the blood? Because they have to use the blood in order to travel where they are. Okay. Most infections, most inflammatory things happen not in the blood vessel, but in the spaces between blood vessels and spaces between organs and the spaces between the functional cells of tissues. And those are called connective tissues because they connect things together. So knowing this, the body, as it has evolved, has come to place the cells that were responsible for those, or place the cells where they're most likely to encounter a bacteria. That's where it's going to place the cells. So it's going to put those white blood cells in those connective tissues. Okay, so in this connective tissue, you're going to find them a lot in the connective tissue. You will also find them in the lymphatic organs. Okay, like the tonsils, the spleen, the lymph nodes, things like that. Blood concentration is really small. Okay, so remember the other one, it is actually less than 0.1% of blood. So it's very, very little that it does. Okay. So there are a couple of leukocytes that you have to remember the names of. Okay, so then we have the types. Okay, the first of them are neutrophils. Okay, are neutrophils. Okay, and so what they do is these are our phagocytes. Okay, and what they do is they just eat pathogens in the connective tissue, and they also release these chemicals that will recruit other white blood cells to areas of inflammation. Two, we have the eosinophils. Our eosinophils. Okay, these are also phagocytes. Okay, and they have a lot of histamine in them. Okay, and so they're a lot of these times they're responsible for our allergic reactions. And excuse me. And you're going to find these a lot in parasitic invasions. Infections. So our parasites, roundworms, things like that. Then you have our basophils. Okay, basophils. These are also they release histamines, and they'll promote allergic reactions and inflammation as well. Okay, so eosinophils, I'll just put histamine next to it. Okay, basophils, they also release histamine. Okay, and then we have two more. We have two more. We have monocytes. So these are very interesting because in the blood they're called monocytes, but when they get into the tissues, then they're called macrophages. And these, I think, I said earlier that probably my favorite cell, and I have to say, yeah, they're probably my favorite cell because they just do so much. Okay, so these are the first responders, basically. Okay, so if you have some kind of injury, you have some kind of infection, something gets into the connective tissue and it just doesn't look like it doesn't belong there, the monocytes and the macrophages, they actually take care of it first. Okay, so that's what it is. They're phagocytic, and they're what's called antigen presenting. And then finally we have our lymphocytes. We have the lymphocytes. Okay, and these provide the special defense, specific defense. Okay, everything up here, everything above this line is non-specific, which means that it will attack anything that's foreign. Everything is foreign. But when you get to the level of the lymphocyte, the B cells and the T cells, the plasma cells, they have to be told, and the response has to be tailored to what it's fighting. Okay, so it's very specific, very specific. So those are the five main types of leukocytes. Okay, so let's talk about our B cells and T cells since we ended up on lymphocytes. Okay, so our B cells, okay, these are responsible for this thing called humoral immunity. And this means through the blood. Okay, through the blood itself. Okay, and so what these are going to do is B cells will turn into plasma cells. And what these plasma cells are going to do is they are going to synthesize antibodies. And what antibodies will do is they'll float around in the bloodstream and they'll attach to whatever it is they're trying to fight, so they become easier to kill. Okay, so those are the first type of lymphocyte. Then we have our T cells. Our T cells. Okay, so these cells are responsible for the cell-mediated. Okay, and they attack cells directly. Okay, so if let's say you have an infection with strep, some kind of strep. Okay, so the T cells, when they have been taught, basically these T cells have to be taught to recognize this kind of strep. What they'll do is they'll go and find it and they will attack that cell directly. So that's the cell mediated. So these cells actually go out and they attack things. Okay, and then we have this third special type of cell, the NK cell, and that's a natural killer. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. That is a natural killer cell. Okay. And basically what this does is it wanders around the body and it detects and destroys abnormal cells. Okay, so that's what we have for our NK cell. Now, finally, so let's just say that you have a cell that's got a virus in it. Now, cells that are infected with viruses, they actually just put up these little antibody that says I'm infected with a virus. And so what the natural killer cell will do is it will see the cell and it will tell the cell to kill itself. Natural killer cells are also kind of decent at sniffing up cells that are cancerous, and also it'll try to destroy cancer cells. So basically, if the cell looks like it just doesn't belong, or it looks a little bit funky because something's going on, it will tell the cell that looks kind of funky to destroy itself. All right, so the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these cells. So here's a picture of our cells. Let's move this over here. Okay, so we're just going to label them. I'm just going to label them just so you can see what they are. So this one here, this is a neutrophil. That's a neutrophil. The highlight of this is you count its lobes. So see here, look at these nuclei. It's a polynucleate structure. Okay. Then you have the eosinophil. Okay, and it's red. Remember EO? EO, it means red. Okay, so it's big red. And then we have our basophil. This is a basophil. It's just dark. Again, it is polynucleate. How to tell the difference between the basophil and the neutrophil is basically by the color. So neutrophils are neutral. They really don't pick up staining very well. Basophils pick up that dark basic stain. Okay, and then here, this right here, this is a monocyte / macrophage. But seeing as you can see here, see all these little red dots. These guys out here, that's an RBC. So seeing how this cell is in with a bunch of red blood cells, that's a monocyte. It's not in the connective tissue proper. And then here we have a lymphocyte. Okay, I'm not going to make you look at it and say, oh, that's a B cell or a T cell or an NK cell or something like that. It's not important. Okay, it's just what a lymphocyte looks like. And with that, we are finished with red blood cells.